ben Baruch Leib HaKohen, friends and family of Sigi Bessler, Shalom Shraga ben Dov, friends of Marvin Weinstein, Mordechai Ozer ben Yisrael Aharon, Sarah Alpert, in memory of her husband, Rav Tzvi Lipa ben Hillel. A month of learning by Carol and Josh Seaborn, in memory of her father, Yehoshua Shia ben Moshe Yehuda. Ike and Evelyn Bach, HaTorah Tov, for his continuing recovery in surgery. Rabbi Dr. Yankee and Malki Honig, in memory of his mother, Rabbanit Hensha Ita Bat Chaim Yehuda. Hannah and David Grunblatt, in memory of her mother, Roisa Bat Chaim. Jill and Perry Meltzer, in memory of her father, Yaakov ben Yosef. Be Pizer, in memory of her stepfather, Avram Michal ben Shmuel Halevi. Be Pizer, in memory of her mother, Razel Bat Shammai. Jerry and Sharon Glassman, in memory of his mother, Malka Yehudis Bat Eliyahu. And pets and children, in memory of his wife, Lee. Sina Bat Shimshon. A week of learning by Andrew and Stephanie Becker, in memory of his sister Yocheved Bat Ze'ev. Evelyn and Isaac Blachor, in memory of her mother, Peril Rivka Bat Rab Menachem Mendel Eliezer. Dita Luxemburg, in memory of her mother, Martha Gidlet Charna Bat Yeshaya. Dina Rabinowitz, in memory of his father, Zeb Ben Chaim. Rena and Alan Mosak, in memory of her father, Meir Ben Yosef. Harriet Brick and Rabbi Moshe Kranzler, in memory of David Dolner's sister, Deborah Dolner. And today being the 27th, Ernie Bloom, Yortzeit, as a day of learning in memory of his wife, Ruchama Esther Bat Yaakov.
Okay. Today we're going to deal with mostly problems uh, um, of snitching. Snitching, which is we know, snitching. Show tailbearing. You show over your property of others. But just to make it easy, but one thing to keep in mind all throughout the sugya, there's a difference between the goyim forcing a guy to know is they're going to torture him or kill him if he doesn't show where his friend's property is, or the person volunteers. There's two different things. It's one thing for a person to volunteer to show something. There's another thing for a person when they're forcing him to show. So then that's what they force him to show. That's not him. Yes, there's a difference. One case it could be in there, knows there, and even cases where a person can. There, another rule to understand is like this: it's if a person, any person could do whatever they have. You have to do whatever you have to do to stay alive, except for the place where the Torah says no. So if I have to take my friend's property to stay alive, obviously I take it, but I can't take it assuming I'm not going to pay. I understand I'm in trouble. Take what you got to take, but you're going to pay. But you're going to pay it back. That's the difference. And that's when we say it's forbidden to save yourself with your friend's property. We don't mean that you're not allowed to save yourself. Of course, you're allowed to save yourself. You're just not allowed to save yourself and not pay. You understand? You have to have in mind to pay the money. So that's the difference. Okay, but there's a difference between volunteering to show the guy your friend's property, and when the goyim are torturing you or threatening your life to show the friend's property. That's a different story. Agozol soda michabeiro. When a person stole the field from his friend, he's a thief. And then marauders came and took the field from him. Okay, imakas medina. He said, if this is a general problem where the marauders are taking fields from everybody, it wasn't particularly from this thief. Omerlo. So the thief says to the guy he stole it from, here's your field. I never stole it anyway. You can't steal property, by the way. You know, say the property can't really be stolen. You can throw people off. It's not metallic. You can't steal it really. Exactly. Okay. So then he could just say, look, listen, they took it from me. They would have taken it from you anyway. What's the difference? I don't have to pay you. Okay, but if it's because of the thief, we have to see what that means, that they took the stolen field. Then he has to pay them back the field. He has to give him another field. Now, if you look carefully, it's important now to notice. You notice that usually when we want to have something and its opposite, we usually do it in positive and negative. So if there should have been a reverse in this mission. It said what? If it's a general makkah, a general problem that the goyim are taking fields from everybody, then he doesn't have to pay back. What should the reverse have been? If it's not a general problem, okay, then he does have to pay back. But you notice that the Mishnah changed the language. Instead of if it's a general problem, he pays. He doesn't pay. If it's not a general problem, then he does pay. No, it says no. And if it's because of the thief, so the change in language indicates that it's not the normal thing and its opposite. Okay, and there are times when we have to say, times we don't. Tosa says, but that's something to keep in mind. You always have to pay attention to all changes. I want to just tell you something important. If you learn with the person who, let's say, who you're teaching, or especially if you learn with a child, it's very important not to change the language, not to paraphrase what you're learning, except when you're explaining it. Why is that? Because if you notice every language and are careful about it, it will save great problems. Okay, here we're going to learn in a few days. We're going to learn probably, one of the most famous Mishnayos in the whole world that everybody knows. So the Mishnah begins, Shnayim ochazim betalis. Two people are holding on to a talis. Two people are holding a garment. This one says, iPad, etc., etc. Good. Now, if when you're learning with a child and you let the child say two people are arguing over a talis, you're not going to be helping the child. Why is that? Because one day, if you let the child say, instead of saying two people are holding a talis, etc., etc., the laws, they're going to swear, they're going to split it, etc., and you let him say two people are arguing over a talis, then many pages later, when he's going to come to a Mishnah, it's going to say, who arba, there's a certain boat, and two people are arguing over the boat, and the halacha is going to be what? The halacha is kol dam kvar. This court says, let him go fight it out. So the kid's going to say to himself, wait a minute, how come when they were fighting over the talis, they couldn't bring proof, we divided it, and when they were fighting over a boat, and they couldn't prove it, we said, go fight. We go fight it out. Now, so had you been stringent with the child when you taught him the first Mishnah, and not let the child say two people are arguing over a talis, but you made the child say what two people are holding a talis, then later when he wanted to know why the law of the boat is different than the law of the talis, I said, oh no, of course it's different. In the case of the talis, they were holding it. They were in possession of it. In the case of the boat, they were arguing over it. They were not in possession of it. So paying attention to language is of supreme importance in Torah learning. Of course, in order to explain things, we paraphrase, but it's very important. It's very important to remember. I've taught my students for years, and you may want to try this. This is what I call a technique. It's not forced, but it helps a lot of people. In my own mind, I always keep two columns. I have one column for what I read and one column for what I understand. And I don't make one column. In other words, I don't assume what I understood is what I read. I think what I read is what I read, and what I understood is something else. So the I read column is here. It's exactly what the page said. What I understood is here. Why? Because if you start to substitute what you understood for what you read, then later, when you're going to recall what you read, you're going to substitute what you understood, and you may be wrong. You see what I'm saying? You have to. Well, no, it depends. It depends. You train yourself. You have to train yourself. That's the thing. A lot of things like that. When I was much younger, probably a little older than 20, when I was much younger, I interviewed many of the great rabbis of Yerushalayim. I was so thrilled to see. I saw not only did I see the great rabbis of, so to speak, who were elder in my generation. I saw the generation before that, all the people who died almost immediately after I came to Yerushalayim. And as I met all the rabbis in their 90s, then when I first came, I saw a whole generation of rabbis who didn't live that much longer. And then I saw the rabbis of my own time. So I had a really privilege, to learn a very, very great deal from very outstanding Torah scholars. And one of the things that when it comes is always a problem because Miyud Shena, there are 40 things that a person acquires Torah with. 48 things a person acquires Torah with. My rabbi, Blessed Mary, believed that they were prerequisites, not like other people that, it's not, he held if you don't have them all, you don't have any. He held you have to have all 48 to be able to be a person of Torah. So one of the things the person has to have minimal sleep. So it's a problem, especially if you're a kid. You don't sleep. How do you learn? So I interviewed lots and lots of rabbis. I understand about sleep. You say, what do you do? So they explain to me. But the major consensus was obviously it depends on each person. When you're Miyud Shena, it doesn't mean that you do the same amount of sleep as the other guy does. You do for yourself the extra 5 that you don't need, you don't take. So you don't sleep the amount that the other guy sleeps. For yourself, each person, according to yourself, you train yourself. I was going to tell you this point also. This is a matter of training. At a certain point, you start to train yourself and differentiate between what you read and what you thought, and it'll save you from God forbid, from coming to the wrong conclusion. So over here, this is just the point in this mission. It's so important to notice, you understand, that rather than davar v'hifucha, which is the norm of a matter and its opposite, It gave a new language, which is a cause for comment, and that's why you'll see the Gemara makes an issue of it. Amar Nachman bar Yitzchak, man detani. This is just a language, but very important. We use the word in the Mishnah we use for these marauders, okay, these thieves, these land thieves. They throwing people off of land, and we call them we call them masikin. But the question is whether it should be read masikin or matzikin. But he says man detani masikin la mishtabesh. If you use the word masikin for these thieves, you're not wrong. Matzikin, if you learn the text of the Mishnah Matzikim, lo mishtabesh, you're also not wrong. Mandatani Matzikin lo mishtabesh. You notice we're starting with number 2 first. The one who learns Matzikin is not wrong. To see because we have a pasuk b'matzar u'b'matzok. Okay, no, the Rachmanis. This is talking about the most horrible punishment. They can eat their own children. B'matzar u'matzok, a siege and matzok in the pain and the suffering. And what's these people? They cause pain, so they're called matzikin. Umadatani masikin, the mishtabesh. If you learn masikin, it's also not wrong. Why? The chsiv, as it's written, by Yirshat Slotzal, saying what Rachmanis here, that the locusts are going to they're going to eat up all the trees, and they're gonna take over. And the targum is chasinine sakoa. So what it means what that the locusts are going to inherit. And what does that mean? So they're called sakah, okay, and that's what so the locusts are called sakah because they steal everything, they take everything. So also what? So also the people who steal the people's land are called masikin. Now, imach masagaz. And now the Gemara is talking about the point that I just gave you this whole introduction about. You notice that when it went to the third, when it went to the second section, it said imach masagazlan, but it's because of the thief chayav. Okay, then the thief has to give the money. Hey, Chidami, what's the case? So if he's saying the case is here, what, that they're forcibly taking the thief's land, and they didn't take in general from the whole general area. We already heard that by inference from the first one. If they told you, is that if it's a general attack, he doesn't pay. If it's not a general attack, he does. So you already learned it. Okay, because you said Medina. You said if it's a general attack, the general plague of taking from people, so then he doesn't pay. Okay, low. And if it's not a general, if it's specifically him they came after, then he does have to pay. So how come you gave me a new category of what? Because of the thief. The answer is no. Lo tricha. You're right. It's a new case. And now the truth is, this is ironic. The Gemara is going to look like it has 2 answers. But it really doesn't. It's really 2 different versions of the Gemara. Usually when the Gemara says another one, it's the Gemara saying 2 versions. This time it's really not. It's really some Rishonim have 1 version and some Rishonim have another version. Okay, the first answer is what? What happened here was what? That the thief heard that the Goyim are trying to take land, and he volunteered and showed this piece of land. That's one. So that's why he has to pay. That's a new case, and he's chayav for showing the land. Okay, he's chayav for showing the land. Lishnachrina, another version of the Gemara is like this. We're talking about no, we really are talking about the first case. We're talking about what we're talking about. We're not talking about a person, a thief. We're talking about anybody who showed the land, okay, but it's called a gazlan. Okay, the other one is what no, we are talking about a guy who stole the land, and the goyim were forcing him. Okay, and they said, listen, show us your land. Okay, and together with he showed also the land of that he'd stolen. So there's responsible. A guy showed the goyim the grain pile of the Reish Galusa, the Exelarch. You're not supposed to do that. I just want to explain one thing. We're going to have an ongoing discussion, but there's 2 reasons to obligate a guy who shows. Either you could say that the law is, remember we discussed about grama or garmi, okay, which is what? Indirect damage. So we have an argument whether we obligate a person for indirect damage or we don't. That's one. So one reason that if a guy shows somebody's property and hands it over, it causes him damage, but he doesn't directly damage his friend. So that's an argument whether we could say, well, if we believe that indirect damage is collectible, so he has to pay. The other way is to say that even if it's not collectible, but the rabbis will find somebody for doing things that they don't want them to do. You have to see what it is. So this guy showed the extra large grain pile. After the comment of Rav Nachman, it came from Chiv Rav Nachman Shalumi. Rav Nachman made the guy pay. Yosef, Rav Yosef, Rav Huna Bar Chia. Rav Yosef was sitting behind Rav Huna Bar Chia. Yosef, Rav Huna Bar Chia, coming over Rav Nachman. Rav Bar Chia was sitting in front of Rav Nachman, who gave the ruling that he has to pay. Amalei Rav Huna Bar Chia, Rav Nachman. So Rav Huna Bar Chia said to Rav Nachman, "Why did you make him pay? Dino Knasa? Do you make him pay by letter of the law? In other words, you're saying what he's obligated for damage done." Or we merely find this guy. This guy keeps going around showing people stuff. You want to stop him, so you find him. Okay, which is it? Amalei says, "What do you mean? It's a Mishnah. What do you mean? That's our Mishnah. It's clear that this is the law, the Tanan. Not a fine, the Tanan, because we learned. Imach Masagazlam, we learned in our Mishnah, we said, what Chayev, if they took the guy's land because of the thief. Probably he has to give another field. We said that's where the person showed the other person's land. So you see, our Mishnah holds clearly that the halacha is that if a guy shows another guy's property to the marauders, that you have to pay. So it sounds like simply saying that we have. Yep. because we according to this opinion, indirect damage is also damage. I took away his money. I showed him the property. No, it's an argument, but now we're holding what you have to pay. You made him lose the money. Basa the Nafak, okay, after he left, after he walked out, I'm gonna have Yosef, the Rav Huna Bar Chia, after Rav Nachman left, Rav Bar Chia was sitting behind. He said, "My nafcha." I said, "What do you care? What's the difference? He has to pay. He has to pay. What do you care? Idino Knasa. Who cares whether it's by letter of the law that he has to pay or if he's fined? Either way, he has to pay." He said them a very important principle. He said, "Idina Gamina Mine." He said, "I'll tell you why. Because if it's from the letter of the law, then I can learn to other cases. Okay, I'll learn in general what that. Let's say this type of all the other cases of indirect damage, I'll make him obligated. The knasa, but if it was merely a fine, lo gamrina mine, I can't learn to other cases. This is very important. What do you mean? Now he said, but this is very important. So he's saying that I have a principle. I cannot compare one case of fine to another case. Fines are unique. Either you have a tradition for a fine or you can't compare them. Now we're going to debate that point. Who said maybe I can learn from one to another? Let me prove it to you that I can. And he says, 1 second. He says, I know that you can't learn from one fine to another. Okay, so we're going to try and prove that you can't. I'm going to show you that you can't learn from one fine to another. The Tanya, because we learn. In the old days, they used to say that the rabbis find tamatame. If a person made his friend's truma tame, okay, he made his friend's truma tame, okay, which everybody can't be eaten. Okay, the Kohen can't eat it anymore. Or if a person poured out his friend's wine for avodah zarah, which makes the wine forbidden. Okay, so originally what they made the person pay. Okay, even though it's unrecognizable damage, you don't see any damage to the produce. It looks the same. So but they find him. Chazru lomar. Later they went back and they amended it and they said afam adameo. Also, a person who mixes up, let's say, who mixes up truma and non-truma. Now, truma non-truma mixed up is not absolutely destroyed. Why? Because you can still a Kohen can eat it, but the person who owned it has to sell it for cheap. No, you have to. Since the only person that can buy it is a Kohen, so you have to sell it for cheaper than you sell the grain. So it's damaged. It's not utterly worthless like the other stuff, but it's still damaged. So you see that we said now you see chazru in only when they revisited it. Okay, when they revisited it and they made a new decree, then it was also low chazru, but they did not revisit and make a new decree low. So you see what my timer. What's the reason? Lamishim de kanasu isn't the whole point that the original damages were fine and they couldn't learn how to find one from the other. They had to go back and make a new enactment of fine. You can't learn from Kanas. So the Gemara says, nah, nice try, but no horseshoe. Why is that? He says, no, that doesn't prove it. That really you can learn from one fine to another. And I'll tell you a very simple reason why. Mikara Sabri left in the beginning, we can learn one fine from another, but even among fines, have to be comparable. Remember, the original cases, what I said, what are cases where the stuff is worthless. When you pour out the wine to Avodah Zarah, the wine is utterly forbidden. If the trumas tame, nobody can. The Kohen also can't eat it. Nobody can eat it. He says, but medameh, we said, what it's a damage, but it's not completely damaged. So in the beginning, they thought, what mikara savre left say meruba chashishu. Yes, we can compare, but this is not comparable. When did we find something when it was a big loss? The stuff was worthless. Left say muad, but a small loss where it's still the grain is still edible, but you have to sell it for cheap to the Kohen. No chashishu. They didn't care about it. So then in the end, they thought, no, that is comparable, even a small loss. So therefore, you can't prove from here that you don't compare one fine to another. But I says, Yini, come on, you want to tell me you can compare one fine to another? Again, I'll try and prove to you that what that you can't compare one fine to another. Hatani Abu Rabbi Abin, didn't we learn? In the beginning, now watch it. Now we're going to reverse it. You can't play the same trick. They first said Hamatame. If a person made the Taharos Tame, and a person mixed up truma and non-truma, which is what? It's only a partial damage. Why? Because you can sell for cheap to a Kohen. So already in the first decree, they already had the lesser damage. You're not going to do the same trick as before. Chazru Lomar, and later when they revisited, they said, Afa Manasech, also a person who pours out wine to Avodah Zarah. So you see why he says, so you see clearly what? He says Chazru in. Only because they revisited it did they make a new decree on libation wine. Lo chazru, they didn't low. There's no decree. My timer. What's the reason? Obviously, it must be because you can't learn from one fine to another. And you can't tell me now the trick one before because the latter one was the worst damage. So sure they should have learned it out. Nah, it doesn't prove it. Again, really what? You can learn from one fine to another, but they still thought to differentiate. Mikara Sabri Rabbi Abin, in the beginning, in the beginning they thought like Rabbi Abin, and then they thought like Rabbi Yirmiyah. What's the point? We know there's a principle called kamle b'derabimine. The person does a death penalty action to get simultaneously with a monetary action. We're not going to kill him or even if he's eligible for it, we're not going to kill him and make him pay the money. But the whole trick always has to be that the money penalty has to come simultaneously with the death penalty. Now, if a guy shoots an arrow on Shabbos 4 amas, so he carried 4 amas to Rishus Harabim, and in the meantime, between the beginning and the end, it tore somebody's expensive clothing. So now, how do I look at that? On the one hand, I could say, you know what, it didn't happen simultaneously, because when is the guy chayav for Shabbos? Remember, to carry, you have to pick it up and put it down. So only when it finally got to the resting place of 4 amas was he chayav for Shabbos. In the meantime, but in the middle, when it went through the guy's clothing, it wasn't chayav yet, so you'd say he has to pay it. On the other hand, I could say no. I say to you, listen, the original picking up was for the purpose of putting down. So the truth is that the putting down already started when he first shot the arrow. So the chiyuv of the arrow was happening the whole time from when he first shot it, and therefore it is simultaneous. That's one way to look at it. So if I say the picking up is for the putting down, it's simultaneous. If I say the picking up is not for the putting down, it's not simultaneously. Now, similarly, when it comes to, let's say, a guy pouring out his friend's wine for Avodah Zarah, when he picks it up, he's stealing it. When did he do the pouring? When he pours it out. So maybe again say, look, picking up is the monetary and pouring out is the death penalty. They're not simultaneous. So I say no. And since the picking up was the pour down, so the picking up and pouring down all happened at the beginning. It's all simultaneous. So I say to it, do I compare the libation case to the arrow case or not? So the answer is, take a look. Mikara says, don't worry. It's not really what I could learn from one fine to another, but they thought they were really discompared. Mikara Sabri Rabbi Abin, in the beginning, thought Rabbi Abin, he thought, Zorak chaitz michil zarba sovarba. If you shot an arrow from 4 amas, you should shot from the beginning to the end. And in the meantime, the Kara Shirayim Balichaso, and in the meantime, while it was flying, it tore this expensive garment. Potter, he's exempt. Okay, now, why should I keep it? Because we said the original lifting up was for putting down. So it's all simultaneous. He's chayav both at once. And since he's obligated on his life, so he doesn't have to pay for the money. And then they thought the Rabbi Yirmiyah said, no. Rabbi Yirmiyah said you can't compare the libation case to the arrow case. The Amar of Yirmiyah said what? Okay. But when it came to the libation case, he already acquired the wine once he lifted it up, monetary obligation. And he already owed him the money. But to be liable for his own life for doing Avodah Zarah, he's only obligated at the time of the pouring. I said it one way. There's other ways to say the same point. Okay, good. But in the end, we tried to prove that you can't compare fines. The answer is we didn't succeed in proving it. Okay, good. Now we're back to the ranch of people showing other people's stuff. Rav Huna bar Yehuda he came to a certain place. We got to the comment of the Rabbi. He came to Rabbi over there. And he said to him, you have any interesting psakalachas you're involved lately? You didn't do anything interesting? You got any case came to your hand? He said, yeah, I had a good case. He says, Yisrael Shantur de Chachamim, the Jew, the Goyim came and they forced him to show his friend's property. You notice how I phrased it? Not like before. Not like he on his own initiative, he showed his friend's property. The Goyim were torturing the guy to show his friend's property. And he showed his friend's property. And the case came to me, did you have to pay or not? And I said he had to pay. I made him pay. Marley. So Rabbi said to him, he says, Ado Abdul he says, listen, he says, you have to go back and you have to give the, you have to change the judgment back, okay? And you have to get the money back to the guy who paid it. Why? He wasn't obligated. The Tanya, because we learned in a brisa, Yisrael is if the guy enforced a guy, a Jew, and he showed his friend's money, Potter, he's exempt because it was forced. But if he actually picked it up with his own hands and gave it to them, then he's obligated. That's different. He's saving, okay, because then he's saving himself with his friend's money. I told you, you're allowed to you got to save your life with your friend's money, but you got to pay. It's not for free. You can take it, but you still got to pay. And I love you, but give me back my money. It's fine. Save your life. You know, say, but pay me. You can't pay me. The Bali Muslim didn't like people to be frumaks. They didn't like people to be a show offy religious. You understand? They didn't let that stuff. So it was Yom Kippur, and one of the students, Mamash Yom Kippur, he's crying his heart out. He's doing tshuva. There was a time when you could speak, So Yisrael Salanta walked up to the guy. He said to him, "What time is it?" So the guy's crying. He didn't answer him. Later, so Salanta walked up to him. He said, listen. He said, so what if you're doing tshuva? You can still tell me what time it is. And he said, what? Because there's no, it doesn't override your human relationship. What do you mean? I ask you what time it is. You tell me what time it is. What's the big deal? You do a thing over here. You say, you got to save your life. In good health. But give me back my money, please. Rabba says what? And Rabba said another point. If the guy showed it on his own, even when he wasn't forced, the nasa must be abidam. That's the equivalent of what? Like we said, that's the equivalent of giving it over with his own hand, like we said. There was a certain guy, the guy enforced them. He showed this rabbi's wine to the goyim. So he showed him the rabbi's wine. Amrle, so then the goyim said to him, after he showed him the wine, here, lift it up, help us carry the barrel to the palace. So he lifted up and carried it, and they helped him along to deliver the stolen wine to the palace. After the coming to Rabashi, they came from Rabashi Patrine. Rabashi said, "It have to pay." One of the Rabashi said to Rabashi, one second. Well, Tanya, one second. How could you say he's exempt? Well, Tanya, we just learned before. If he picked it up with his own hands and gave it, then he is obligated. How can you tell me what he is? Okay, you're right. They forced them to show it. Okay, but then you have to pick it up. He says, Amarlu, he said to him, no. He said, you're making a mistake. He says, when we said that that he's obligated for picking up honey when they had not first already seen the stuff and he handed it over physically, then he's obligated. Since he legally showed it, so to speak, originally, and they now know where it is, okay, as far as we're concerned, as if the stuff was burned up, it's lost already. Therefore what? And therefore what? So the fact that he helped them is nothing. It's nothing. The stuff is already gone. So Rabbi asked the Kasha Rashi 1 second. He says, "Amar honest, didn't we learn?" He says, we learned if the marauder said to the guy, "Hoshitli pekia amarza," he said to the Jewish guy, "Here, reach me over this stalk, this stalk of your friend." Oh, Eshkol and Avizah, or reach me over this cluster of grapes that belong to your friend. Voshilo, and he gave it to him. Chayiv, he's obligated. So you see clearly what? If he gives it over, so you see his chayiv. He says, no comparison. He said, Hochamaskina, read carefully. He says, Kagon de Koi B'Trev Nahara. That case wasn't our case. That's a case where they were on two sides of the river. The guys on one side and the Jews on the other side of the river. Okay, and what? Okay, and therefore, what? He couldn't get it. So of course, that the guy gave it to him. It wasn't lost. The guy couldn't get it without the help of the Jew. And Daikanami, and you can see if you read the words carefully, it indicates why the because the language that was used was Hoshitli. He said, what? Reach it over to me, hand it over. Well, Tony Tainley didn't say give it to me. So you see, reach it over to me means what? He had to reach it over the river. Shmami, no, indeed, you hear that? It's different. Okay, who's Shuta? Okay, there was a certain net that used for trapping fish or animals. Two men were arguing over it. You notice, but it's a very important point, by the way. Without the possession, they were arguing over it. Hi, Armadidu. This one said it's mine. Armadidu. This one said it's mine. And really, the law is what? So go fight it out. Do what you want. Okay. One of them went and paid it to the tax man. Okay, here. So he paid it down to the tax man. Okay. So what? Omar Abaya said, Yochel Omar. He said, the guy's okay. He can say, listen, he said, listen, I claimed it was mine. I paid it because I believe it was mine. What do you want for my life? leave me alone. I says, Amalei Rabbi. Rabbi said, no, nothing to do. And he says, the whole community, does the guy have a right to do it? We never paskined that it was his. El Amar Rabbi says, Meshamtina, he says, we put the guy into excommunication. He has to go get the net back from the guy, and they have to go stand in judgment and work it out. A certain guy wanted to show the goyim his friend's grain pile. After the coming to Rav, he came in front of Rav. They tried to stop him. Amalei, Rav said to him, Lo techavi, don't do it, don't show it to him, don't show it to him. Amalei, and the other guy was a Russia. He said, Mechavina, I don't care, I'm going to show it. Yosef Rav Kahana came to Rav. Rav Kahana was in front of Rav at that time. When he heard this Russia say this, that he's gonna show the Jews' property to the goyim, he ripped his neck out. He killed him. Okay, he killed him. You're gonna see it. He killed him. Okay, Kari Rav. So Rav said about him. He quoted this pasuk to show that he did the right thing. Because why? The pasuk says like this. Your children fainted. Shachma rose kol chutas. They're lying at the head of every street. Okay, gato michmar, like a wild ox that's in the net. So you see, mato came b'michmar, just like this wild ox when it falls into the net. Aim rachman love. There's no more mercy on the guy. Af mamatre Yisrael. The same thing with a Jewish money. Came shenach b'yadav de chachamim. Yeah.
Not the guy.
Yeah. Yisrael, also the money of Yisrael came to once it falls into the hand of the guy, they have no mercy. And what's the point? You think it's bad enough that you gave the guy's money away, but you're going to kill the guy in the end. Because what happens is the guy take his money, then they come back for more money, then they torture the guy, believing he's going to have more money. Eventually, they kill the guy. He said they never stop, and therefore already now, right? The guy was really threatening his life, and Rav Kahana said you have to kill the guy. Just like if a guy's chasing a guy to kill him, you kill the guy. But you can't hesitate. By the way, when it's time to kill a guy, you got to kill him. You know, saying we don't like it, nobody wants to do it, but when you have to do it, you have to do it because these guys are murderers. You have to stop them. So I'm late. So now at this point. But then Rav said to him, even though Rav defended him, it was not quite 100% what Rav Kahana did. It's an argument why it wasn't 100%. Either because he should have asked the rabbi before he killed him. He should have asked the rabbi, but he shouldn't have paskined. He shouldn't have paskined in front of him. He should have done it. Or the other way, he really should have killed him indirectly. He shouldn't have killed him the other way. With the Masa, you really don't kill him directly. You should have killed him indirectly. Either way. He said he was right, but he wasn't 100% right. So you'll see in a second. So he said to him, before now, when it was only the Persians who ruled, there's still a Kaptei Shvichas Dami. They didn't care so much about murder. Okay, the Kaptei Shvichas Dami. But now we have the Greeks. Some people learn the opposite. But either way, they worry about murder. And they're going to say, they're going to say murder. You're going to be in trouble. You better get out of here to save your life. Kum Sakler Israel. Go quickly, get up and go up to Eretz Yisrael. But you have to accept to do tshuva and do this. For 7 years, even though you're quite capable, don't challenge the teachings of Rav Yochanan. For 7 years, you'll do tshuva. 7 years is like a lifetime of a person till you get your brains in your head at 7. It says, Azel Eshkechei l'Reish Lakish. Okay, so he got there to Israel, and he found Reish Lakish Yosef v'Kol Messiah Metivta Diyam D'Rabbanan. Reish Lakish used to chazer the shiur of Rabbi Yochanan every day. He would sit with the students and review the lesson. Amalu, and then when they were all broken up, Reish Lakish said to the students who were now broken up into their groups, he said, Heicha, Reish Lakish Heicha. So Rabbi Kahana said, where's Reish Lakish? Amalei. So the student said, Amai, what do you want him for? Who's looking for him? And they said, what do you want him for? Amalu, he said to them, Hi Kushya says, I have this question and this question to ask him what Rabbi Yochanan said. Hi Peruka, and Hi Peruka, and have such and such responses to his problems. The students, relayed what Reish Lakish's wise comments to Reish Lakish. Also, Reish Lakish went to Rabbi Yochanan and he warned him. He said, "Ariel Mibaba, a lion came up from Babel." There's a very sharp Talmid Chacham who showed up over here. He said, "Lion Marbe Metivta L'Machar." He said, "But take special care. Prepare your lesson carefully. There's a sharp guy." Yeah, name of this Rav Kahana. So the next day, they knew, they saw the Rav Kahana as a special guy. They sat him in the first row. They had 7 rows. They sat him right in the first row. You should know, we're not used to in the Yeshiva of Chasam Sofer. They all had ranks. Not so long ago in the Chasam Sofer Yeshiva, they had ranks. Until you got even to be called, you were called to this. They had to be called a chaver, then Rav. It took ranking. He says like an army. Even the Shiva Chasam was over. But anyway, they had ranks. They sat him in the first row. Amar Shmaisa. But remember, he had accepted not to. He'd accepted for himself not to speak up. Amar Shmaisa. So what? So Yochanan says one lesson. Actually didn't challenge him. Shmaisis, he said another lesson. Actually didn't challenge him. So they moved Rav Kahana back 7 rows. This guy here, hey, the guy hasn't got the goods. Those who were Darbasa till they had him sitting in the back row. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan ben Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan said to Reish Lakish, he said, Ari Shamata, this lion that you told me about, Nasa Shul, he's a fox. What is he? He's not a lion. What's happening? He's not showing up with anything. Omar, he says, so then Rav Kahana says, okay, look, enough is too much. He says, Yehi Rava, he says, may it be Hashem's will, the Hani Shevador, that these 7 rows, let me instead of the 7 years I'm supposed to wait, these 7 rows, the embarrassment of the 7 rows is sufficient tshuva, and I can start to speak up immediately. Rav knows these 7 rows will be the 7 years that Rav said to me, and I can talk. Kami got up on his feet. Amalei, he said to Rabbi Yochanan, and he says, Nahader Ma'aberesha. I said, let's start again. He said, tell over the year again. Amar Shmaisa, he said a teaching, V'akshay. Yeah, Rav Kahana asked him a kasha. They immediately put him up to the first row. Must have been a good kasha. They put him right up in the first row. Amar Shmaisa, Rabbi Yochanan said another teaching, V'akshay, he challenged him again. So Rabbi Yochanan, in order to he was sitting on 7 carpets, you understand, for kavod, and he himself realized he has to do tshuva. Okay, so he took out one. He says, "Okay, you win." Amar Shmaisa. Rabbi Yochanan said another lesson. Actually, Rav Kahana challenged him. He had no rugs. He's sitting on the floor. The Yosef Alar, he's sitting on the ground. Rabbi Yochanan is now down all the 7. So then Rabbi Yochanan Gavra Saba. Now Rabbi Yochanan was very old. His eyebrows were so long they drooped down over his eyes. He couldn't see anything. Amalus, he said to him, Dalalis, he said to the students, Dalal says, Leah, raise up so I can raise up my eyebrows. Let me see who this guy is. They took a silver fork and they lifted up. He was very chashuv. They took a silver fork and lifted up his eyebrows. The Pachis was saying, it turned out Rav Kahana had been smashed in the mouth and his lips were split. So to Rabbi Yochanan, it looked like he was smiling at him. He's laughing at him. Okay, yeah, like smirking, right? They say, so he started smirking at him. Exactly. So Rabbi Yochanan was offended. He felt bad. And it was enough. Rabbi Yochanan feeling bad was enough that Rav Kahana died. That's what happened. You don't talk to Talmid Chacham. He felt bad that Rav Kahana died. The next day they buried Rav Kahana. The next day, Rabbi Yochanan was reviewing the day before with the rabbis. He said to him, you see what that Babylonian was doing? How he's laughing at me? They said, no, Daki Achi. That's what he looks like. He says he wasn't laughing at you. That's his face. His lips are smashed. He says. So yeah. So Rabbi Yochanan is a man of action. Al Gabi Marta. He went up to the cave where they buried Rav Kahana. So he saw that a snake had positioned itself on the mouth of the cave with its tail in its mouth to stop anybody, like a lock, to stop anybody from going in. Amalei, so Yochanan said to the snake, Achna, snake, psach pumech, open up your mouth, let me in. Let the master go into the student. Let the teacher go into the student. The snake wouldn't open its mouth. He says, okay, let one peer come into another peer. Let an equal come into an equal. The snake wouldn't open its mouth. Okay, he says, okay. He said, let the student go into the master. Let me, the student, go into the teacher. The snake opened his mouth. Okay, so he finally got in after he called himself the student. By Rachme, and he begged Hashem, and he brought Rav Kahana back to life from the dead. Amalei. So Rabbi Yochanan said to Rav Kahana, had I known that's how your mouth actually looked at it, that you weren't laughing at me, I never would have felt bad, and you never would have died. He says, come on, please come back with me. Come back with me to the yeshiva. Amar Leis, Rav Kahana said to him, listen, he says, if you can ask mercy from heaven that I'm not going to die another time and have to try and revive me, then I'll go. But if you can't guarantee I'm not going to get killed again from you being insulted. I'm not going back because listen, he says, why? He says, I already had my chance at a miracle. You don't get so many shots at miracles. I got one miracle one time to come back to life. I'm not relying on this for another time. Okay. So he said he woke him up, so to speak, and brought him up. He was still slumbering. He woke him up, and Shaile, and then Rabbi Yochanan asked him, every question, every doubt that Rabbi Yochanan had, he asked Rav Kahana, but Pashtino Kahana answered him back. And Hainu Dam Rabbi Yochanan, that's what Rabbi Yochanan said. He says, in the old days, I used to say what? That the Torah is really yours, you the children of Israel. Why? Because since you didn't go into the exile, and you didn't have the troubles of the exile, your minds are the clearest, and the Torah really is Eretz Israel. But the truth is what? The real Torah belongs to the Bablis, to the Babylonians. Why? Because great rabbis went down and they never budged from the teachings of those great rabbis. A certain guy went and he showed the goyim a fine jewelry, a fine cloth that belonged to Rabbi Abba. And they stole it. Yosef Rabbi Chanina Bar Papi, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, these rabbis were sitting together to judge the case. Yosef Rabbi Law was sitting in front of them. So what? So they wanted to obligate the guy for showing it. Where do they want to prove it? They wanted to prove here, like we said, that indirect damage is obligated. Where do they learn it from? Since we learned. Donis Adin, if the judge judged the judgment and was mistaken, and one thing, he made the person who was obligated the money, he said he doesn't have to pay. The guy who was exempt from paying, he made him pay. What was clean, he made unclean. Okay, he called unclean. And what was unclean, he called clean. What he did, he did. You don't have to reverse the judgment, but but the judge has to pay from his own pocket. So you see what? That the judge for indirect damage has to pay. So the same way the judge has to pay for indirect damage, so too does the guy who handed over his friend's property, showed to the guy who showed the property to the guy, he has to pay. Said, get out of here. He says, get out of here. He says, this is what I said. He says, you make a mistake. That whole law that we learned by the judges, where the judge himself took the property and handed it over. And all the cases we said, you'll see it explained in Sanhedrin all kinds of ways that he actually physically handed it over. Army, okay, Army. So they said to him. So they said they said to Rav Abba, excuse me, Zil Gabi Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Rabbi Lazar ben Badas. Go to these rabbis that did in the army. Go to those rabbis because they obligate people for indirect damage. You'll get your money. Also, he went to those rabbis, and they obligated the person who showed to pay. We must listen. And where did they take it from? From our Mishnah, where we said, like we learned, if the goyim were stolen the land because of the Gaza, in other words, what? Chayiv is obligated. The Gaza has to give it. When we explained that Mishnah, like we did a little earlier, we said that's where the guy showed it to him. So we see that our Mishnah holds that for merely showing his friend's property to the goyim to steal it, he has to pay. Who got it? Huh? Yeah, according to this opinion, he's a damage. That's a damage that we're liable. Yeah, I've been avoiding. I mentioned earlier, and we're going to wait. In the right time, I have to have a whole class about it. But I've been avoiding a famous problem. You have people who make no differentiation between grama and garmi. Some people say it's all the same. It's always like I've been saying to you the simple way. Indirect damage is indirect damage. Some people collect it, some people didn't, or some people collect it as a fine. Et cetera, et cetera. But some Rishonim differentiate between grama and garmi. They're not the same. There's indirect and directly indirect. You say more direct, indirect. You say that
none of the cases work completely.
Yeah, but we'll have to have a special. But then we have to have a special session. There was a guy who was a guardian, and somebody had deposited with him a silver cup. So thieves came to this guy to steal from the watchman. Shokla v'avalus. He took the silver cup that was deposited by him, and he gave it to them. After the case came in front of Rabbah that they want the watchman to have to pay. Patre, he said the watchman doesn't have to pay. Amalei Abai said to him, why make him not pay? He says, he saved himself with his friend's money. They came to steal from him, and he gave the other guy's cup. He has to pay. He says, Rabashi says, that's right. That's not what we do. Chazin, you have to see. If the watchman was himself a wealthy man, it's clear that they came to get his money, and therefore he saved himself with his friend's money, so he has to pay. The elo, but if he's not a guy that has money, I died to the kaspa after it's clear, they only came to it because they knew that he had the silver cup, and then it's not his problem. A certain guy had a purse where the community had put money to save captives. This is a Jewish thing. Everything about the Torah breaks my heart, to tell you the truth. Just between me and you, I'm not late. I am broken up when I sell the chametz every year. When I sit with the goy to sell the chametz, it breaks my heart every year. Why? I'll tell you why quickly. When I sell the chametz to the goy, I'll tell you why. If you ever look, one day we have to do it together. You look at the contract that we sell to a guy. We make one acquisition after another. The contract is written 20 times. It's 7 really. This way and that way. Why? We say if this works, then you're getting the chametz this way. That doesn't work, you get the chametz this way. This way, that way, this way. And any court case, you win. And anything, etc. It's always yours. It's not ours. It's yours. If you go with a contract, the chametz in 50 languages, we make sure. Listen, whatever happens, we don't have any chametz on Pesach. Whatever it is, it's yours, and you can have it. I don't care what happens, it's yours. And it tears me apart because Jews are so holy, you understand, that we make ourselves crazy. We write that an irrevocable, ironclad, impossible to break. It's guaranteed, it's yours, and it's not ours. That breaks me. It breaks me up. So yeah. That's the right way. That's fine. That's the right way. Levi Yitzchak, there was a famous Hasidic rabbi. So they used to call him the Sanigor. They used to call him the Sanigor of the Jews. Levi Yitzchak. Everything used to defend Jewish people. He always wanted to show Hashem that Jews are good. He's always arguing to show that Jewish people are holy and good. So one year it's Erev Pesach. It's Erev Pesach, So over there where they were, it was against the law for people to hold tobacco. Tobacco was contraband. The government, it was so valuable, the government wants to control all the tobacco and collect all the money. So nobody's allowed to have tobacco. No, it's Erev Pesach after the time of chametz. After the time of chametz. No, the rabbi says to a shamash, he says, go around the town and tell everybody the rabbi wants beer. The rabbi wants beer. Yeah, the rabbi wants beer. Yeah, chametz, beer. He goes around. The guy comes back. He's disheveled. His hairs are disheveled. He's all beaten up. Every Jew threw him out. What do you mean? It's Pesach. It's also we don't have beer. Yeah, they threw the guy out. He says, very good. He says, do me a favor. He says, now go around and tell everybody the rabbi needs as much tobacco as they can get. He comes back and got a wagon load of tobacco. Everybody gives up tobacco. The rabbi wants tobacco. He looks up. He says, Kadosh Baruch. He says, the czar, he says, guns. The czar has swords. The czar has horsemen. The czar has everything. He says, no tobacco. He says, do your Jews have tobacco? You bet your wagon load. He says, God with no guns and no horses and no horsemen. So Hashem says no chametz. Yes, for chametz. The Jews have chametz. There's no chametz. So that's the thing. You have to say also, so Jewish people, one of the things that breaks me up always about Jews, besides everything breaks me up about Jewish people. You want to break my heart? Just talk to me about Jews. But I'll take any Jew anytime. And I'll sign the paper. Even when you give me paper, I'll sign it. I'll take you bring me your worst one, I'll take it. I'll take anyone, anytime. Anyone, any Jew. And one thing about the Jews that always break me up, that Jewish people throughout history, we put aside money, and people we never met, and people we never saw, and people who we can't even communicate with, we can't even say the same language, we don't know what we're talking about. We put aside our money when they were in trouble. What we do, we took our money, we sold the Sefer Torah, whatever we had to save another Jew in another place. Who cares? Who cares who he is? Who cares what language he speaks? We made nothing. That's Jews. Jews put us away. Pidyon Shvuyim, that Jews took their money always. I don't care who it is. I don't care what his name is. Here's the money. Here's the money. Go save another Jew. And so one of my students, his grandfather was in Yerushalayim, and he heard that in Baghdad they were going to execute Jews. He got on a donkey and went from Yerushalayim to Baghdad with nothing. He said, I have to save Jews. We have nothing. There's nothing with nothing. He got on a donkey and rode to Baghdad. If Jews are in trouble, they got to save their lives. The Jews. This guy had the purse of the Pidyon Shvuyim money. He had the purse with the money to save other Jews. Okay, what happened? Okay, I'm not going to be in Shuin. Saliku Ganavi Levi. So thieves came to one. They want to get the money. Shokla, they wanted to steal from him. So what did he do? Shokla, he took the purse with the money, and he gave it to them. So now the person who gave the money, who had deposited with him, took him in front of Rabba. Patre, Rabba said he's Potter. We said, well, it's the same rule. Okay, he saved himself with his friend's money, but he got to pay. You got to pay. He says, Amarle said, no. He says, there's no greater rescue than this. He rescued himself. That's what the money was for. What do you want? He saved it. A certain guy. Now, here's the thing. A ferry boat is for people and not for animals. The ferry boat's for people and not for animals. So the guy snuck in quickly. He knows they're not going to let him put his donkey. He quickly put his donkey on the ferry. The sneaker before the people got on. Now they're in the river, and what? And the ferry's going to sink. It's going to sink. So a certain guy came. The guy pushed the guy's donkey. He started to push that guy's donkey. But Shadi pushed it into the river, and the donkey drowned. So now the guy who owned the donkey came in front of Rabba. He wants to get paid. Patre. He says, Rabba says, no, the guy doesn't have to pay you. Abai said to him, when the guy pushed the donkey off the boat, he was saving himself with his friend's money. He says, no. He says, Jaime Carr wrote it. He says, you're wrong. He says, the guy who put the donkey on was liable for it was a murderer. This guy shutting everybody's life. He was saying, you don't put donkeys on things, going to kill everybody. And therefore what? And you're going to see in a second, what is the point? If I'm allowed to kill a guy who wants to kill me, I can certainly take his money. That's the main point. If I can kill a guy who's going to try and kill me, I can certainly take his money. He had the right to kill his donkey, Rabba, to save their lives. If I can kill him to save my life, I can take the donkey. Rabba at the time, and that Rabba was following his reasoning. What's the reasoning? If I can kill a guy who's trying to kill me, I'm certainly allowed to take his money. Dama Rabba, because we learned. If one guy was chasing another guy to kill him, and the chaser broke utensils, Bain shall niyadaf, whether the utensils belong to the one he's chasing, Bain shall call them, or if it's anybody else's. Potter, he doesn't have to pay. Shahai Mishai Benafsho. Why? Because since he's liable to be killed himself, so the monetary penalty that he incurs at the same time is exempt. If the guy who was being chased broke utensils of the guy chasing him, he's exempt. Why? Because he can't be that a guy's money is worth more than his body. If the chasee is allowed to kill the chaser, who's trying to kill him, he can certainly destroy the utensils of the chaser. That's the principle we learned. Avol shall call on them chayiv. But the chasee who broke other people's stuff, chayiv, he has to pay. Why? You're not allowed to say, even though he's being chased for his life, he's allowed to say, he's allowed to break other people's kelim if he has to, but he has to pay. Okay, but you can't say him. Let's say a guy was chasing the chaser, the hero. The hero was chasing the chaser to knock him off. The hero, lahatzil. Okay, the hero is chasing the chaser to save the chasee. Vishabar kalim, and the hero he broke utensils. Yeah, Bain shall niyadaf, whether he broke utensils of the chasee, or Bain shall call on them, or anybody else's. Okay, Potter, he doesn't have to pay. What do you mean? Why does he have to pay? Lominadim. Really, it's not that he doesn't pay legally. Really, by huh?
Why shouldn't it be the pursuer who's responsible for anything that?
It's a long discussion, but for right now, the point's like this: why is the hero? He said the hero doesn't pay, but really, it really should pay. Really, the truth is he should pay. Why? You got to break, but you got to pay. He says, "Elo what? But why doesn't he pay?" American. If you don't say that he doesn't have to pay, nobody's going to go out and save his friend. If you're gonna nail the guy for the stuff he broke by saving the guy, you can't do it. But the point is, but okay, good.
So is the same law with Jewish robbers?
Yeah, so we're talking.
We're only talking.
One second. There's a lot to talk about Jewish robbers, whether they're really dangerous or not. It's going to come up. It's a lot. It's much bigger than this page. Yes. There's
depends on whether he's a gunner for
There's lots of new points. Lots of new points. You got one minute, I'll tell you something interesting. You got a second, I'll tell you something interesting. I couldn't stay in school when I was a kid. I ran away all the time. It was one long, dark, boring thing. I couldn't stand the place. And I used to run away to the library as much as I could. And when I was quite young, there were a lot of fresh manuscripts from the Holocaust. So as a kid, like 9 years old, 8, 9, 10, I read scores of firsthand accounts of people who were tortured and most horrible things in the world. It's written, you know, and so as a kid, I could understand the words. You understand? I understood the word, but it was too much for a child to fathom. So in my mind, I couldn't understand how human beings how could human beings have behaved with such a monstrous way. So in my mind, I came to the conclusion that they all lost their minds. They had to be crazy. So I just realized there was mass insanity in Germany and Austria and Poland. They were just crazy. As a kid, I couldn't understand anything else. Long story short, a couple of years later, I left home. I went there to Israel. I went there to Israel. I grew up a very innocent kid, So I went there to Israel, and I'm learning Torah, Baruch Hashem. And one of my neighbors, his wife had a pregnancy where she couldn't. She had to stay in bed for 9 months. So my friend rented a television. She's going to lie in bed for 9 months. He rented her a television, so she should have something to do. She's lying in bed for 9 months straight. I walk in the house. We used to live in 2 rooms. We still live just 2 rooms. This room and the other room. Every house has 2 rooms. We lived 1 room and 1 more room. So in our houses, if you visited anybody, you visit everybody. So I go to visit my friend, but it's only 2 rooms. So his wife is there also. No, they got the TV. They had on the TV. They had a show called The Allies in Auschwitz from the BBC. The thesis of the show was that the Allies could have bombed the crematoria, et cetera, anytime they wanted, but they didn't do. Okay. Meanwhile, but remember, I grew up in I never saw anything. So they have, in the meantime of the show, they show clips from the Eichmann trial. If you remember, Eichmann, Israel built a whole building, a special building, and they put a glass box. They put Eichmann in the box, to try him. I'd never seen this before. I'd never seen it before. And at that moment, they're showing clips of Joel Brandt. I don't know if you know the whole story. Joel Brandt from the with Joel Brandt, and Joel Brandt is pointing to Eichmann, which I've never seen in my life. So he points, and the camera pans to the glass box, and I look and I see the Eichmann guy, and I went into shock. I went into shock. Yeah, he's nodding, smiling. He understands. I'm sure that. I remember. I thought these people were insane. All of a sudden, I'm looking at a person who doesn't look crazy. I lost my mind. The next day, I went to the library. I read 10 books in one day, at least 10 books in one day. And I came out. My whole life was changed. My whole life changed. My whole life. Why? Because for the first time, I thought all the time I was growing up, I thought these guys were insane. I thought these guys were crazy. And all of a sudden I realized they were not. They were sane and they were wicked. And they were wicked. And I was on the bus home and my whole life changed. And I said, you know what? I said, a Jew is the most precious thing in the world. I said, you know why? These guys were sane who decide to be bad. And Jews are people who are sane who decide to be what? Decide to be good. And I said, Chazal say you shouldn't make a bracha without kavanah. It's not a good thing to take Hashem's name. I said, give me a Jew who makes a bracha, even without kavanah. I'll take him any day. I'll take him any day. I make a bracha because a guy who stops before he shoves the. You see people when you see people eat without a bracha. It's shocking. It's shocking. It looks barbaric. Once you make bracha, it looks like they're putting a rat down there. It looks barbaric. You see people eating without a bracha. I said, but give me. I said, when a Jew stops to make a bracha, even at kavana, before he shoves the food down his throat, he stops for a second. One, he's going to have to share that food with somebody else, or maybe even give it up and not eat it all for the sake of somebody who needs it more. He's going to be light years ahead of everybody in the world. I tell you, give me a worse Jew, I'll take him. I'll take him before anybody else in the whole world. That's what I was talking about before. There's nothing to talk about. None. There's nobody in the running. You ever in a race, you look back on the horizon, there's nobody there between you and the horizon. There's nobody in this world like the Jewish people. Nothing. There's nothing. They're the holiest, the best, the kindest. You have to be anything for a Jew. Okay, anyway. Good morning. Thank you. That's a word from our sponsor. Good morning. Go on. Yeah, nothing.